Welcome. I'm Steve Millard, President and CEO of the Greater Akron Chamber. Over 150 years ago, the international rubber industry was born right here in Akron, thanks to the soon-to-be globally recognized names of Charles Goodyear, Harvey Firestone, and Dr. Benjamin Franklin Goodrich. Following World War II, the modern polymer industry emerged, giving birth in its own right to new discoveries, new opportunities, and ultimately hundreds of new companies that remain a cornerstone of our local economy, and the impetus for today's ongoing conversation and dialogue. For the past century, at the center of this evolution, from rubber to plastics and polymers, is the University of Akron, a consistent thought leader globally recognized for producing ideas, patents, and talent that have elevated Greater Akron as the polymer center of the Americas. Today's webinar is part of our ongoing commitment to promote collaboration and conversation amongst both the public and private sectors in support of this historic and important industry cluster. First, we'll hear from University of Akron President Dr. Gary Miller. Dr. Miller has some exciting announcements and updates to share regarding the University of Akron. Dr. Miller will be followed by Dr. Tianbo Liu, Interim Director of the School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering, who will provide an overview of the capabilities, curriculum, and resources available to companies like yours. Following Dr. Liu will be Brian Anderson, the Greater Akron Chamber's Senior Director of Research, along with Surendra Chawla, our lead consultant who spent more than 30 years at Goodyear. Brian has been instrumental in the work of the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative, and he'll share the progress of the initiative over the past year, and more importantly, what is planned going forward. In addition, Brian will outline how your company can get involved. Finally, I will join Dr. Ali Dinajawala and Brian Anderson for our Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative question and answer session. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Gary Miller, who since his arrival at the University of Akron has been a partner in every sense of the word, especially when it comes to supporting the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative over the past 2 years. In his more than 30 years of experience in higher education, Dr. Miller has served the American Academy as a researcher and professor, chair, dean, provost, and vice president, chancellor, and president. He earned his PhD in biological sciences from Mississippi State University and held teaching positions at Mississippi State, Weber State University, and the University of Mississippi. He served as Dean of the College of the Pacific and as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs and Research at Wichita State University. He then served as Chancellor of the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, and then as Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. Dr. Miller became the University of Akron's 18th president in October 2019, shortly before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. Facing unprecedented challenges, he swiftly built a strong leadership team, oversaw an academic redesign, and stabilized the university's financial position. Dr. Miller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Steve, for that introduction and for your support of our polymer program. I also want to thank Dr. Tianbo Liu, A. Schulman Professor in the School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering, who's serving as the school's interim director. I know that he will continue to expand the school's tremendous opportunities for our students and for our local polymer companies. And thank you to everyone here in attendance, especially those of you who partner with us and support our world-renowned polymer program. At this time of year, we often reflect on the achievements of the past year, and we anticipate successes in the coming year. And I'd like to take a moment to do that. 2021 has been a challenging but very successful year at the University of Akron. We returned to in-person instruction, bringing students, faculty, and staff back to campus while maintaining a safe environment during the continuing presence of the pandemic. We are stabilizing our financial position, resuming our strategic planning process, and filling key leadership positions. One of these key leadership positions that we're looking to fill is a new position of Vice President for Research and Business Engagement. This person will be the main contact for business and community partnership formation. This position is critical because we want to share our resources and collaborate with business and industry so that we can continue to increase our region's economic strength. One way we increase our region's economic strength is through our world-class polymer program, which has been strengthening the region for decades. Let me reflect for a moment on our past polymer successes. Our polymer faculty research has resulted in more than 300 issued and pending patents and helped launch more than 24 regional startup businesses. Our more than 2,300 Polymer alumni are employed throughout the region, country, and world, many of them working as company founders, CEOs, presidents, vice presidents, and directors, and as academic leaders and professors. We've also served the polymer industry for more than 50 years through testing services, completing approximately 200 projects per year. Since 2017, we have provided polymer-related testing services to more than 150 companies. During that same period, Akron Polymer Training Services trained nearly 900 employees from 350 companies. Moreover, our talented researchers continue to tackle the most pressing real-world problems: renewable feedstocks, degradable polymers, advanced solar cells and efficient batteries, medication delivery, and orthopedic materials. These are just a few examples of the many ways our faculty are working hard to reimagine the way we use, reuse, and dispose of plastics and rubber. In support of these and other efforts, our faculty continue to receive millions of dollars in prestigious grants and awards from entities such as the National Science Foundation and the U.S. Department of Energy. In fact, in partnership with the Chamber and others, we've applied for a large polymer-related grant from the Economic Development Administration in the U.S. Department of Commerce. As we look to future successes for our polymer program, the Polymer Cluster Initiative is central to our plans. Based in part upon findings from the cluster, we're expanding our offerings at the undergraduate level because we know that attracting bright young minds to the world of polymers is vital to our local economy. In addition to offering a minor in polymer science and polymer engineering, we recently completed a curriculum for a full-fledged bachelor's degree in polymers, which we hope to launch in the fall of 2020. You'll hear more in a moment about the Polymer Cluster Initiative, what it's accomplished in the past year, and how it plans to move forward. The university is committed to the Polymer Cluster Initiative because it benefits the local polymer industry and our world-renowned polymer program, making the university more accessible to you. This collaboration between the university and the local polymer companies is essential for our region's success. Therefore, we invite you to join us, to rise with us, because none of us can rise alone, and the health of our region depends upon us rising together. Thank you for your time, and now back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. We appreciate the update regarding the many polymer successes enjoyed by the University of Akron over the past year. In addition to the onboarding of a Vice President of Research and Business Engagement, it's great to hear of additional class offerings at the undergraduate level, including for the first time a bachelor's degree in polymers. Great news for local companies and students from around the world looking to increase their interaction with the University of Akron. Next up, we have Dr. Tianbo Liu, Interim Director of the School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering. Dr. Liu received his PhD in chemistry from Stony Brook University in New York. After serving as a postdoctoral associate at Stony Brook, he started his independent research career at the physics department of Brookhaven National Laboratory. In 2005, Dr. Liu transitioned to Lehigh University as an assistant professor of chemistry and was promoted to associate professor in 2009 and full professor in 2012. During his time at Lehigh, he received an NSF Career Award, the Eleanor and Joseph F. Lipsch Early Career Research Award, and was named an Alfred P. Sloan Foundation Fellow. In 2013, Dr. Liu joined the University of Akron's faculty as the A. Schulman Professor of Polymer Science. He went on to be appointed chair of the Department of Polymer Science in 2018, and earlier this year was named interim director for the school. Dr. Liu, please tell us about the latest from University of Akron School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Tianbo Liu, A. Schulman Professor of Polymer Science and the Interim Director of the world-renowned School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering at the University of Akron. Today, I'm going to provide an overview of our school, including its history, academic programs, and achievements, to give you a better sense of how the School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering has been leading the field for more than a century. Our school has a long history. It started with the rubber industry in the city of Akron. From early days, we have rubber industry and rubber research and development effort. Eventually, after the World War II, we officially had a new polymer program at the University of Akron. After more than 70 years of development, our School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering has developed into a world-leading polymer research center. At this moment, we have 3 major buildings on campus. The Goodyear Polymer Center is a home for polymer science program, as well as many major instrumentations. Polymer Engineering Academy Center is a home for our polymer engineering program. Also, we have a National Polymer Innovation Center where you can see major polymer processing instruments. Overall, our program is considered a leading figure in the polymer science and polymer engineering, including polymer processing all over the world. Our school has a total of 26 faculty members, about 190 PhD students, and 85 master's students. Every year, we graduate about 35 to 40 PhD students, and our students experience a 100% job placement rate at an average starting salary of $96,000. Our school has established a very impressive accelerated master's program. This program involves international collaborations with multiple universities. We recruit those students, and after 2 years study at University of Akron, those students will get their master's in their 5th year. This program has generated more than $18 million in revenue. That is about $2.7 million a year. We have received 41 state-funded awards, totaling over $33 million since the year of 2001. In one academic year alone, we received $1.8 million in IDC from the university. The school has over 300 issued and pending patents, with an average of 185 scientific papers published per year. Our research is conducted on $31 million worth of the state-of-the-art equipment and analytical instrumentations. Our school is behind 28 regional startup businesses and have 490 alumni employed in the state of Ohio, resulting in well over $47 million of annual regional income. Our alumni include 26 company presidents, 31 CEOs, 9 CTOs, 5 founders, 32 VPs, and 98 directors, as well as 96 university and college professors. We have multiple educational programs. At this moment, we are focusing mostly on the graduate education. So we offer both master's and PhD degrees in polymer science and in polymer engineering. At the same time, we have developed a unique master's degree called Professional Master's Degree in Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering. And we have the advanced or accelerated master's program with more than 10 universities in China. Now we are developing our new program. We are planning to start our bachelor's degree program in polymer science and polymer engineering in 2022. So that will introduce a major change to our school will focus more on educating our undergraduate students. Meanwhile, our school also offers unique opportunities for students with other majors. We provide minors in polymer science and polymer engineering. We provide summer internship program through NSF REU project. Every year, we host high school students, high school teachers, and provide research trainings. Our professional master's degree is specifically designed to help local industry workers to earn advanced degrees in polymer science and polymer engineering. That will benefit our local companies. We have a strong connection to industry. We have received $24 million in industry funding for research in a span of 5 years. So therefore, that is about $4 to $5 million per year. We served over 120 client companies over the last 3 years. Also, in the last 3 years, we have received close to $1 million in testing and processing services in our school for industrial partners. We served over 470 companies over the last 4 years, with many returning customers. So we train those customers, we train their basic technical skills, train them how to perform basic experiments and polymer processing for their companies. At an average of 35 courses per year, we have served over 1,250 industry students in our APTS workforce development courses, and that has generated over $1 million in training revenue. In addition, we have a special training program with Saudi Arabia. We have received $43 million of funding for this so-called HIEI training grant starting from 2008. At the same time, we received endowments from industry. Every year, we receive over $200,000 for student fellowships, and altogether, our school has an endowment over $15 million. Our school has an excellent infrastructure. We have all the state-of-the-art instruments related to polymer characterizations and polymer processing. Those instruments are maintained by experienced PhD level scientists. So the major instruments include NMR and mass spec center, rheology and processing lab, microscopy lab including SEM and TEM, spectroscopy lab, polymer characterization lab, surface characterization lab, and a newly established 3D printing lab. Our NPIC has unique capabilities for polymer processing. We have the well-established instruments to train students and to serve industrial collaborators for their polymer processing measurements. At the same time, we receive extensive funding from the federal government and from the state of Ohio for our outreach activities. Funded by the US DOE, we have an upward bound math and science program. In that program, we focus on polymers and overall STEM education. National Science Foundation provided support through a research experience for undergraduates, the so-called REU program. We have trained over 270 REU students since 2004. Those college students came here in the summer, got trained by our faculty members for research. Many of them later decided to pursue advanced degrees in science and technology related to polymers. We also have a research experience for teachers program. Through this program, we train high school and middle school teachers. So overall, our school is doing well, even at the difficult time during the pandemic. We are still trying our best to do our research, to make new discoveries, make new inventions, and continue to train our students. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time. If you would like to learn more about our programs, visit us at uakron.edu/polymer.
Thank you, Dr. Liu, for walking us through the exciting things going on at the University of Akron in polymers. The history and strength of polymers at the University of Akron helps to illustrate why polymers is an increasing focus of our collective regional economic development work. The Akron area has long been a center for the world's polymer industry, initially establishing itself as the rubber capital of the world, and then broadening its focus in areas of expertise to include plastics and other polymers. There are literally hundreds of polymer companies in Northeast Ohio, and while we find that there's a general awareness of a polymer industry within our region, we see a real gap in understanding the full scale and composition of our polymer industry, as well as the specific challenges and opportunities the industry faces. At the start of 2021, as a part of our regional Elevate Greater Akron effort, we kicked off a research initiative called the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative, an effort to better understand and catalyze growth in our polymer industry. Supported by the City of Akron, Summit County, the GAR Foundation, Team NEO, the University of Akron, and the Greater Akron Chamber, the work of this initiative will help us answer questions like, how big is the industry today? What organizations currently support the polymer industry? What are our region's major polymer assets, and what challenges are common across polymer companies? What issues can we solve better together than independently? What big global opportunities can our polymer industry take advantage of? And what does a long-term vision for a stronger cluster look like? I'd like to now introduce Brian Anderson, Senior Director of Research at the Greater Akron Chamber. Brian has devoted much of his focus in 2021 to the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative, bringing a fresh perspective to the process of convening industry leaders, identifying areas of opportunity, and developing an actionable path forward. We've also engaged a polymer industry veteran to bring his polymer expertise to bear in support of this cluster initiative. Many of you know Surendra Chawla. Surendra worked at Goodyear for 40 years, most recently as Senior Director of Global Innovation, where he developed a global network of R&D leaders, universities, national labs, and supply chains. I'll now turn it over to Brian to walk through the nuts and bolts of this work, some of their findings from this year, and what we can expect next from the polymer cluster. Brian?
Thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work on polymer industry cluster development this year. The objectives of the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative include big, open-ended questions that can't be answered in a silo, nor should they be tackled from a single perspective. To pursue these objectives, the first thing we did was to create a Polymer Industry Advisory Council, which is a group of leaders from across the industry that we would agree to come together regularly to discuss in detail all aspects of the industry. This group of leaders would inform and drive our work, resulting in a truly industry-driven outcome. The Polymer Industry Advisory Council is currently structured as a single group of over 25 leaders representing different subsectors of the polymer industry cluster. Included are CEOs and heads of R&D and operations from polymer companies, as well as their supply chains. We have leaders from higher ed and university research, commercialization and startup service providers, former Fortune 500 executives, and entrepreneurs. This group will continue to expand so that it achieves a fuller representation, both geographically and industry application, of our polymer cluster. Thinking about working together to drive growth in our polymer industry cluster, I want to clarify what the polymer industry cluster is. At the risk of oversimplifying, the core polymer industry can be thought of as the collection of all companies involved in the manufacture of plastics, elastomers, and chemicals. For economists, that means the combination of NAICS industry codes 325 and 326. The polymer industry cluster, which we view as having a regional footprint, is the set of all polymer industry companies, as just defined, operating within our region, plus those companies' supply chains, plus the collection of organizations and programs that provide the inputs and resources our companies need to grow, operate, and thrive. All of this together is the Polymer Industry Cluster, a sort of polymer-focused ecosystem. Industry clusters are identified by a high density and interdependence of many organizations operating in the same or related field. And we see that thriving industry clusters generate outsized benefits beyond just the combination of many individual companies operating on their own. There's a catalytic nature and an amplification of benefits, a sort of regional economies of scale that leads an industry cluster to drive serious growth. Our region has a high density of polymer activity for many decades, and our goal in the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative has been to strengthen the interdependence and interaction between these many polymer companies and support organizations. By convening and facilitating collaboration among leaders in the cluster, we're trying to create shared solutions and catalyze sustainable growth. Now let's hear from Andre Thornton, CEO of ASW Global and member of our Polymer Industry Advisory Council.
Hello, my name is Andre Thornton, and I'm the CEO of ASW Global. I have been a member of the Polymer Industry Advisory Council since its beginning, and I'm supportive of the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative. ASW Global is a leading 3PL provider of supply chain solutions, material handling, e-commerce, fulfillment, and asset management services. We serve local, national, and multinational companies, including many in our Northeast Ohio polymer industry. We're in an ideal geography for this type of work, located halfway between the Chicago and New York markets, with multiple highway systems converging in our backyard. And national polymer industry growth should be concentrated here in Northeast Ohio. I'm a member of the Polymer Industry Advisory Council because I want to contribute to and benefit from increased connectivity with our polymer industry cluster leaders. And I support the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative because I think it's well suited to convene and facilitate these connections, and that will help us to achieve our goals. At ASW Global, our success depends on open communication with our current and potential clients so that we can plan ahead and innovate our supply chain services to meet the current and future needs of our clients in a seamless manner.
Thank you, Andre. So having accomplished our first goal of forming our Polymer Industry Advisory Council, we struck out to develop a better idea of the scale and scope of the industry, as well as ecosystem gaps we can fill that would drive polymer growth and innovation. In the Northeast Ohio region, there are nearly 800 polymer establishments, individual companies and locations, accounting for over 42,000 jobs and $8 billion in annual output. There are 3 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Northeast Ohio that operate in the manufacture of rubber, plastic, and chemical goods: Goodyear, Sherwin-Williams, and Parker Hannifin. We have many additional large polymer companies operating here, including Bridgestone, RPM, Lubrizol, Eaton, Saint-Gobain, Continental, and more. Again, hundreds of polymer companies in Northeast Ohio. It's true that there are distinct markets within the Northeast Ohio region and 4 individual metropolitan areas in Akron, Canton, Cleveland, and Youngstown. But it can take less time to drive from Canton to Cleveland or Medina to Youngstown than it can to drive from Brooklyn to Manhattan, or Pasadena to Hollywood, or Rogers Park to the Loop in Chicago. The point is that all corners of Northeast Ohio region are accessible. All industry assets in Northeast Ohio can be leveraged to achieve our common goals. We've come to understand our polymer industry cluster as being a Northeast Ohio polymer industry cluster with its heart and highest density in the Akron area. So we've convened a group of industry leaders and developed a good understanding of the sheer size and density of our polymer industry. Now, how about the support system? The set of organizations and programs and other resources in place that supports our polymer industry companies as they form and grow and innovate, operate, and compete. This cluster ecosystem provides polymer companies with workers, capital, infrastructure, advocacy, opportunities for industry connection, and entrepreneurship and innovation support. Together, our Polymer Industry Advisory Council has identified gaps in the ecosystem, things we're missing, or in some cases, things that are there but are not being leveraged as much as they could be. But by continuing to identify and fill ecosystem gaps, we can seek to create an ever stronger environment for our polymer companies to operate in. That stronger environment is an attractive location for companies to establish and expand in, And so we see that what's good for individual organization also winds up helping the region as a whole achieve its growth goals. Some examples of gaps in our ecosystem that we've identified are in workforce, infrastructure, and polymer startup support. Let's look at infrastructure as an example. In order to understand the importance of this infrastructure gap, it's important first to understand the role and constraints of research and innovation in the polymer industry. Polymers are foundational materials that are made into many different things: consumer and industrial products, tires, hoses, tubes, interior and exterior of your car, even passenger jets. The materials that we use to make all of these things have certain properties. They're this strong, they're this heavy, and so on. As we try to do more and demand better outcomes of our products, we must innovate our polymer input materials to accommodate those goals. If we want to improve fuel efficiency in passenger vehicles, then we can try to make a car weigh 2,800 pounds instead of 3,100 pounds, and that means that we need to create new material that's just as strong as the old one, but it's lighter weight. And if we want to reduce our global waste and help fight climate change, then we can try to make existing products out of truly recyclable materials. And that means we need to create new material and processes that does, X, Y, and Z, but which we can be broken down into virgin material so that we're not adding more non-degradable material into circulation every time we produce another unit. In the polymer industry, big sustainable growth will derive from materials innovations with broad global applications. Our region boasts a large number of talented researchers dedicated to new materials innovations. And the research process is long, but breakthroughs can have enormous potential. And here's an example of one of the infrastructure gaps in our ecosystem. When research labs develop new materials, they produce that new material at the scale of a few grams. When industry considers adopting a new material in manufacturing its products, it needs a whole lot more than just a few grams to go through the proof of concept, testing, and other steps required to actually use that new material in production. Researchers that are unable to provide potential industry partners with sufficient quantities and corresponding analysis of their new materials are left with the Herculean task of generating market traction without large-scale proof of concept. The result is lower adoption rate, and innovations wind up dying in the lab, failing to achieve industry adoption. As a result, you can see that one opportunity is to invest in our shared infrastructure to design and equip a pilot production facility for advanced polymer materials research and development. This facility, accessible to both university and industry researchers, would enable the iteration and production and testing of new materials at the scale of, say, 1 to 100 kilograms. Its modular nature would enable it to expand in stages to accommodate an increasing number of processes, larger quantities of production, and in doing so support our researchers, accelerate our innovations, and drive growth for the industry. So that's sort of one standalone example of the work we've been doing this year. Understand the process of operation and growth in the industry, identify gaps, and formulate solutions for filling those gaps and meeting our industry needs. Now let's hear from Kevin Westgate, Director of R&D at Continental and member of our Polymer Industry Advisory Council.
My name is Kevin Westgate, and I am the Director of R&D at Continental located in Fairlawn, Ohio, USA. I've been a member of the Polymer Industry Advisory Council since its inception earlier this year, and I'm very supportive of the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative. Continental is one of the world's leading automotive and industrial suppliers of rubber and plastic components. We combine product, engineering, and development with material expertise into valuable holistic solutions for customers across a broad range of applications, both regionally and globally. Our success depends on a reliable and regenerating workforce, from the factory floors to our R&D labs, new innovations relevant to the auto and industry trends, and communication foresight between suppliers and customers for a cradle-to-grave approach. These are both industry-wide and regional challenges that are ideally solved together. Continental is committed to increasing the sustainability of materials and products that we produce as our mobility solutions evolve, making vehicles and equipment lighter weight, more efficient, creating processes and technologies to break down used materials to be remade into new products, establishing a circular economy. These are all pursuits that affects the entire industry and can benefit from shared solutions. I'm a member of the Polymer Industry Advisory Council because I want to help define our industry's challenges and develop solutions, and I support the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative because I think it's positioned to advance our industry, strengthen our region, and that ultimately helps my organization achieve its goals.
Thank you, Kevin. While research and innovation can unlock huge industry growth, workforce is the most urgent common problem facing our industry. Workforce is not a challenge unique to polymers, but it's pressing nonetheless. The fact is that in the Akron metropolitan area alone, there are about 18,000 open jobs and about as many unemployed residents. Our overall population is not experiencing high growth, and so solving our workforce shortfalls requires upskilling and reskilling our current population. We've begun to develop strategies for strengthening the pipeline of students enrolling in programs from the high school level all the way up through graduate level that prepare graduates to work in the polymer industry. We've also identified areas of training and education that are in demand in our polymer companies, but for which our regional institutions do not currently offer programming. In these cases, we're working to try to create these additional programs to fill those gaps. A new bachelor's program in polymer science and polymer engineering will help to fill that gap. Next step is a program that focuses on technician training, like injection molding, huge needs throughout the region. By convening industry leaders and working to understand common current and forecasted workforce needs, we can help bridge the gap, the workforce gap, and fuel industry growth. In terms of opportunities, the biggest that our polymer industry is positioned to capitalize on are sustainability, future of mobility, and healthcare. As corporations and nations adopt increasingly aggressive sustainability goals, the production and use of industrial and consumer products must be made more sustainable. Automobile tires are a $100 billion plus per year global industry. Plastic bottles are $150 billion. Improvements to the materials and processes surrounding these kinds of ubiquitous products have massive commercial implications. With the future of mobility, there are increasing opportunities to integrate and contribute to connected, autonomous, shared, and electrical vehicles. And in healthcare, not only have we responded to the sudden increase in demand for producing PPE, but polymers has an important role to play in biostable and biocompatible materials for implantable devices. These are some specific examples of high potential opportunities in polymer applications. Our aim is to take the challenges and gaps that we've identified and to develop industry-driven solutions that take advantage of these priority global opportunities. The goal through all of this effort is to catalyze growth. Today, our polymer industry accounts for over 42,000 jobs and $8 billion in economic output. Current polymer industry growth forecasts are about 2% per year. We believe the Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative has the potential to catalyze substantial new growth. We believe that we can increase the current growth rate from 2% to 3% by 2030. We can achieve this by helping meet our employers' workforce needs, improving supply chains, and introducing impactful new materials. But not only can we help our polymer industry grow faster, we also believe we can increase our share of the U.S. polymer industry from 1.7% today to 1.8% by 2030. We can achieve this by strengthening our local polymer workforce, creating new partnerships between universities and employers, and adding to shared infrastructure and support services. We can improve communications, both within and outside the region, to market our assets and capabilities. There's a lot we can do to demonstrate that this is where polymer companies want to locate and where polymer companies want to grow. So our goal is really to win a larger slice of a larger pie. Going from 2% to 3% annual growth and 1.7% to 1.8% market share sounds pretty small, but these are big markets with big opportunities. The work of the cluster is projected to double the growth of the polymer industry in our region beyond what would happen without any intervention. This will lead to an additional $2 billion per year in polymer output by 2030. Now let's hear from Jim Popio from Smithers.
Hello, my name is Jim Popio. I'm the Vice President for North America at Smithers Materials Science and Engineering Division. Smithers is a multinational provider of testing, consulting, information, and compliance services. With labs and operations in 3 continents, the Materials Science and Engineering Division supports multiple industry sectors, including automotive, tires, aerospace, packaging, raw materials, and others. I'm a member of the Polymer Industry Advisory Council because there is strong potential to catalyze new growth in the polymer industry in Northeast Ohio. As plastics, elastomers, and other synthetic materials continue to grow in new industry applications and the need increases to combat climate change through sustainable production, innovation in the polymer industry becomes increasingly impactful. A more proactive and collaborative polymer industry cluster can catalyze and accelerate this innovation, helping unlock this growth potential. By continuing to engage industry leaders on common challenges and by pushing for shared solutions and industry innovation, the Polymer Cluster has the potential to create substantial and sustainable new growth. New growth can come from innovations in recycling, in sustainable products, or by applying polymer materials in new healthcare, automotive, or alternative energy applications. The Polymer Cluster, as a focal point in Northeast Ohio, is positioned to help our local assets capitalize on these opportunities, while developing the next generation of scientific talent needed to make these innovations and growth a reality.
Thank you, Jim. We appreciate the insight you bring to this cluster development work. So where's all this going? Our work in 2021 has included benchmarking a few other industry clusters that have engaged in the type of work that we're doing here for several years, and that have been successful in creating and sustaining focus, support, and action for their industries. Their work has helped us develop a plan, as has the input of a number of our industry leaders who have shared their priorities and lent their support to continuing this work. We'll build support for the industry over time, and we plan to get started in 2022. An active polymer industry cluster would provide value to companies by convening, connecting, and showcasing companies' programs and resources. We would continue our work to identify common challenges and gaps, develop shared solutions, and act on behalf of the cluster to drive support and implementation of those solutions. We can also add ongoing value by enhancing cluster communication, awareness, and visibility both within and outside the region to showcase our assets and capabilities. We see cluster organizations operating in other regions keeping a modest staff of highly talented, connected, and creative individuals that are dedicated to working on behalf of their industry companies, advancing and expanding and executing on things like research and supply chain and entrepreneurship and workforce that are specific to their industry clusters. We see cluster organizations serving as a focal point, both listening to its industry leaders to learn from their needs, and also at the same time providing data and forming connections to provide value to the cluster. So this is kind of where we see all this headed. Modest investment shared across a large number of organizations, generating strong ROI for industry participants and the region as a whole. Our next step towards this goal is to expand our engagements with industry and cluster leaders and to hone and implement the plans we developed in 2021. Our Polymer Industry Advisory Council, which started in April of 2021 with 17 members, has grown now to 28. We intend to increase the size of this group to 50 by the end of 2022, achieving a more complete geographic and cross-industry coverage. This also creates the table for the industry in the region around which leaders, innovators, practitioners, and support stakeholders can jointly discuss the problems, opportunities, and innovations that will accelerate our region's success in polymers. From this larger group, we'll create 4 distinct working groups within which we'll be able to focus efforts and gain traction and further develop our plan forward. These working groups will be focused on 4 key areas of development for the polymer industry, including workforce, research and development, supply chain, and new ventures.
The ideal thriving industry cluster is industry-driven, well-supported and connected by universities with domain expertise, and funded by both companies with a stake in its success and the governmental and institutional investment that brings benefit to the region's stakeholders. The industry will need investment capital to make strategic, targeted investments in our cluster and to support the solutions that we're formulating to meet our industry needs. One benefit of this Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative is that it already has some experience working together to pursue outside funding on behalf of the cluster. Already this year, we've begun the process of seeking catalytic funding from outside sources to meet our needs in workforce, infrastructure, and innovation. For more on that, I'll turn it back over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks to you, Surendra, the steering committee, and our funders for helping us make that work happen over the last year. It's really unlocked a lot of opportunity, as you all heard, for how we move forward. As Brian indicated, on September 30th, we submitted a proposal to the state of Ohio to create a polymer industry sector partnership. Industry sector partnerships are industry-specific collaborations between employers, education and training providers, and other community leaders that work to build a more skilled workforce. The state of Ohio offers funding to support these activities, and we think that a polymer industry sector partnership can be a really catalytic vehicle for addressing our workforce challenges. And on October 19th, we submitted a proposal to the Federal Economic Development Administration under their Build Back Better program to invest in our region's manufacturing sector and polymer industry. This program is allocating $1 billion to regional industry cluster development across the U.S. We formed an unprecedented collaborative throughout Northeast Ohio in developing this proposal, formulating a set of distinct, complementary development projects that would elevate not only core polymers, but also high-growth applications of polymers in the region. Our proposal is to bring in $75 million from EDA, to be matched about 40% or so from public and private stakeholders. This type of investment can spark real new growth for us, and so we're glad to see our regional partners pulled together to collaborate on this. We appreciate the support and engagement of our polymer industry companies and partner organizations. As we go down this path of examining the health and trajectory of our polymer industry, the feasibility of strengthening our cluster, and how to best tackle our shared opportunities together, you can play a role. If you represent a polymer company, a polymer cluster, a supplier, and you want to get involved, there are a few ways you can do that. You can invest in our Polymer Industry Cluster Initiative and contribute as a member of the Polymer Industry Advisory Council. You can help us achieve our goals by finding potential polymer industry workers, connecting with researchers, telling us about suppliers you have to go outside our region for, or introduce us to polymer startups that you think have what it takes to bring impactful innovation to the industry. Reach out to us to schedule a meeting to discuss your interests and how you can get more involved and engaged in the work. We appreciate your support and your interest in this work. And we will now turn to getting some questions from our audience with Brian Anderson and Dr. Ali Dinajwala, former director for the School of Polymer Science and Polymer Engineering at the University of Akron. Guys? We have heard that we won that proposal to get to the next level. So we're now one of the phase 1 finalists for that proposal to the Economic Development Administration. And we have the opportunity now to spend the next few months to build out our proposal to bring what we think is maybe $75 to $100 million to Northeast Ohio with a whole bunch of partners on advanced manufacturing with a big focus on polymer and advanced materials. And so Brian, Ali, thank you for your work leading our industry cluster initiative over the last really year or so, and for the excellent work you did in sort of coordinating partners and leading on development of the proposal. I guess I'd love to hear from you guys in terms of what you're most excited about that, and a little bit more details of what that means maybe for the region. Maybe Brian?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And being selected as one of 60 finalists out of over 520 applicants nationwide, I think it's a really strong demonstration of the value of our regional approach to polymer cluster development. We have a tremendous amount of polymer assets across the Northeast Ohio region, and as we go about sparking new collaborations that can drive growth and innovation, we think we can do that by connecting these many assets. And so we're excited for the opportunity, and we take this as a sign that we're on the right path.
Ali, what's it mean for polymer research at the University of Akron?
It's a very exciting, Steve. I think for so many years, we have spent so much effort in making polymers which are stable, they last longer. And this new exciting initiative that we are part of as EDA proposal is to really develop a pilot plant facility. And this will help us take ideas from lab scale to creating prototype, to creating materials that could be actually tested in real environment is super exciting for us as researchers and also as a local group of people here, companies. I think the other thing that the initiative also does is brings together the local industry with a common goal. And I think that really is catalytic to all the innovation ideas that Brian and Surendra and the Polymer Cluster Initiative are talking about. This will really be a stepping in this right direction.
So good news for us and for the region. And again, just the ability to be winnowed down in a field of 500 plus applicants to just 60 across the country, and actually the only one in Ohio that was selected to sort of go to the next level of competition. So I want to invite folks who are on the call with us today, if you've got questions you can sort of submit those to us on the chat. We'd be happy to take those about the initiative, the work that's been done, or anything that you heard today in the broadcast so far. So we'll give you a second to put any of those questions in you might have. Can you tell me a little bit more, Ali, about the projects on sustainability that are going on at UA and how we can help leverage innovations in that area through the cluster work?
Yeah, Steve, there is quite a bit of activity going on now at the University of Akron, also in the rest of the polymer community in the world. And one of the challenge that has really come up front here is how to make polymers that are sustainable, maybe use the resources that are also not petroleum based. And that has been a challenging problem for us. If you think about the history of polymers, you think of rubbers, you think of plastics, they were really invented to make last long time. We don't want a chair that we are sitting on falling apart at the wrong time. So the idea here is now is quite challenging if you think about it, that we want the molecules that actually make the polymers and recover back those molecules and use it again. We want either the plastic that we are done using it somehow at the right time, right conditions, break apart and disappear. And so that is going to require a lot of effort, not only from innovative ideas, new materials, new processes to develop those materials. And at the University of Akron, we've last some years, 3 years, we have been engaged in developing new chemistries and new materials, which will essentially help us. So there are projects that are going on, which we can think about ranging from colors, sustainable colors inspired by nature from birds. We have projects going on in taking carbon fiber composites and triggering it to just recover the carbon fiber and the monomer and reuse it. Imagine amount of plastics that we put in waste now and how much we can really impact in that direction. We are working on projects which will allow us to recycle polyethylene and polypropylene streams, which is one of the two major products of plastics that we use nowadays. And it's a material which essentially fills our landfills here right now. And we can make that big difference. So I think we're excited. We're excited because the cluster initiative allows us to connect. We cannot work in a silo. We need connections. These ideas to go to fruition has to have industry participation. We need to have the right scale of materials to test. And so I think everything is kind of right and timely. We are seeing this last year, motion in the right direction, and we're super excited.
And I think if I can, I think from a cluster standpoint, we want to increase the number of research projects that are undertaken that sort of leverage our existing assets and capabilities towards these big global problems that we know polymers is positioned to help solve. We want to increase the connection of our researchers across our region's universities to sort of tease out complementary skill sets and make our region overall more competitive in securing federal funds to support research. And we also want to, as Ali mentioned, we want to bring industry to the table earlier on in the research process so we can accelerate the whole pipeline, the industry adoption phase on the back end, right? The earlier industry is involved, the faster that whole thing will sort of translate from new idea to industry impact. And so that's one thing that we think that the convening and collaborating efforts of the cluster can achieve.
And I think that's a great point, Brian, because, one of the things that we thought early on that would make this different, you can talk about the legacy of polymers that we have in the region, and we've got obvious numbers of companies and players, but their habits about working closely with each other, innovating with each other, dealing with shared problems, that is what really distinguishes, I think, a cluster and its impact in a region from just having a bunch of companies that do similar things. And so as you think about that, what have you learned about other industry clusters and how they go about connecting those dots that might help with the work here?
Yeah, so some of our work this year has involved benchmarking some existing industry clusters in other regions, and also complementing that with what we can learn from the literature on both the theory and practice of cluster development. And we know that the types of activities that I guess we do at a Chamber of Commerce, the types of connecting and convening, right? We're bringing leaders together that are industry veterans to help identify shared challenges that we can solve better together than individually, and then collaborate to develop solutions and pursue those. So, I think learning from others' experiences and also drawing from the experience of other industry clusters, so that we can sort of set our expectations and learn from what they've done, right? So we're not, it may be tempting to focus on immediate needs and individual companies, but it's really imperative that cluster development, it's a long game, right? So we want to identify systemic problems and develop long-term solutions. So while we do want to create new jobs next year, that's not our goal. Our goal isn't to create new jobs next year. Our goal is to see how much we can innovate proactively and grow the industry over 10 years.
Right. And I think that's, you mentioned in your comments before, Brian, that the numbers you're talking about in terms of percentage growth and share growth are relatively small, but we see increasing sizes of market out there that if we can just capture a small slice, we can do really well. One of the questions that we've received is about, wanting to learn a little bit more about the polymer pilot scale kind of production facility, the idea of creating some capacity there. That's going to be a big project. It's a big capital project and construction project that if we're successful, we'll endeavor to put together. Can you guys talk about how that's going to impact the industry or what that looks like?
Sure. I can jump in here. So Steve, the idea here is that how do we take something which is done at a few gram scale on a lab bench and take it to something which would be maybe tens of kilograms or hundreds of kilograms. So we want to think about how we can leverage instrumentation and capacity to scale this up. So that's the main focus of the pilot plant. This is very vital to do because it's very expensive. Developing new chemistry and scale up and materials fields, particularly polymers, is super expensive for a startup companies and small companies who are about to engage in this thing. So having that kind of flexible modular facility which allows you to scale up the chemistry, characterize the material that you're producing, and also processing it so that it is in a stage where it can be tested into as a product, as an end-use product, or it could be something that the other industries could test in their applications, will be a big step. And so what we are doing in the next few months is we are going to design and work out the details of how that pilot plant facility will look like, which is part of our proposal effort anyway, that we have to submit by March 15. And this is something which I think will seek out input from small scale industries around here. We will seek out input from our local industry partners, from advisory groups that Brian mentioned. And I think that is something that is going to shape a little bit better as we move forward.
Yeah, Brian, as you mentioned, being able to drive 30 minutes in the region somewhere from all across the region and get to a facility like this where you can, keep tabs on the production, you can sort of really experiment and iterate, is going to be a game changer for a lot of our small manufacturers and inventors and innovators that don't have that capacity in their current facilities. Now, I'm going to ask this question. I'm not sure I totally understand it, but it's I think it's for our science guy here. So the question is, what's the plan at the University of Akron for bio-based polymers that possess the suitable properties at the usage conditions, but also when at end of life product can be easily managed, circular, and sustainable? I think that's a question about what we're doing with bio-based sustainability challenges, but you interpret that.
No, I can do that. I think it's a very good question. This is something which has been a hot topic for many, many decades now as to how do we reduce our dependence on the petroleum-based starting material. And so we have several projects going on in this area. I won't take too much time here to address the detail, but it definitely can reach out to me and I'll be happy to connect you also with other folks in it. We are looking at natural fillers. We are looking at melanin as a source for colors, as I mentioned earlier, one of the projects that is going on in this field. We are looking for starting with CO2 as our starting monomer. How small can we get and how environmentally friendly if we can convert CO2 to plastic? We are looking at many different examples which will reduce the dependence on the petroleum-based products.
Good. And there's a follow-up question here I'm going to get to you, Dr. Dinajwala, that we don't have time to handle today. But but we'll get that question answered for Pasari. There's another question here about opportunities that have happened where we've had opportunities to bring pilot plants, production plants for sustainable raw materials to the area, but the state of Ohio has not been able to support those efforts. And so I think to the question that's being asked here, I think the exact reason for this group is to help drive more support and activity in that space and help folks understand, especially at the state, that these investments in this region are going to make a difference. The good news is Jobs Ohio, Team NEO, the state itself have all been very supportive of the EDA proposal we put forth, and we expect to have them very involved in this work as we go forward to see more growth there. Let me ask a final question here as we wrap up. Brian, you talked about the cluster and the initiative. It is new. We're looking to grow it. If companies want to get involved and engaged in this work, what do they need to do? And how can they be sort of helpful in the work we've got going on over the next quarter and the next year?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. So I think the simple answer is to reach out to us, reach out to me, myself, Surendra Chawla, others. We'll be very happy to meet, learn about your organization's operations and sort of what your challenges and interests are, and then we can figure out best next steps from there. We have our advisory council that we're looking to expand in 2022 and even create working groups to dive into specific areas of development for the cluster. Also, if you simply want to stay informed and potentially benefit and engage in some of the activities that our advisory council is going to develop, then there's a place for that too. So we are looking to increase support and generate more outreach over the next year. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
It's super rare to be in a position where we have the opportunity to get involved at the very beginning of the next thing, right? It's certainly not the beginning of our polymer industry. We've had that here for decades and have done well with it. But this is really a next wave of work and development and growth for the industry. So if you want to get involved in that, please reach out. You can get to Brian pretty easily here at the Greater Akron Chamber or Dr. Dijawala at U of A. Gentlemen, I just want to say thank you to your work over the last year in getting this work started. Without the support of the University of Akron, organizations like Team NEO, the Summit County, City of Akron, and others, the GAR Foundation, it wouldn't have happened. So thank you for helping us toe into this. We're looking forward to the great work that you're doing and hopefully success about this time next year with a major investment in advanced materials and polymers in Northeast Ohio. So again, gentlemen, thank you. Thank you all for joining us today to hear a little bit more about this work. We're going to make this information available on our website and other places as well. So if you want to tap into it again, you can. And again, if you're interested, please reach out to us about getting involved in this initiative. Thank you all. Have a great holiday.
Thank you.
Thank you.